Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone, the program that loves to look after your mental health and well-being. So before the break, we asked you which of these is a symptom of shock. Is it A, pale, cold, clammy skin, B, shallow, rapid breathing, or C, nausea? The answer is actually all of them. Along with vomiting, dizziness, and lightheadedness, shock can cause an array of profound physical responses, most of which is linked to the sudden spike in adrenaline when faced with an unexpected situation. Well, now here to discuss with us about how to deal with shock in children is our resident guest, Sharon Lawton. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Hello, Chris.
Lovely to have you back on.
It's always a pleasure to come.
So tell us, Sharon, do children and adults deal with shock differently, would you say?
Interesting. I think what's really important to recognise is that all of us, children and adults, experience stress at some time in their lives. The difference being is that where children are concerned, they need that little bit of extra help. Well, actually, they just need help in being able to manage those big feelings like shock. And stress. And of course, when we are experiencing stress, and I'm just going to show you some little things that I use when I'm talking about stress and shock with families. The part of the brain that's activated is the reptile brain, and that really is our survival brain. Now, the job of the survival brain is to activate that fight, flight and freeze response. It's there to keep us safe. So a child who has been exposed to prolonged shock or exposed to stress, what happens is their little reptile brain has been sort of put on fight, flight or freeze. Now, a child who has been, well, put it this way, if our reptile brain has been scared a lot by maybe a severe shock or stress of some kind, it doesn't forget. And so children who have been exposed to extreme shock or stress, their little reptile brain, their survival brain, is sort of working overtime. And what we can find sometimes is they can be triggered into that fight, flight or freeze response by the slightest tiny thing. It might be a sound or a smell or something that just sort of shocks that into play. Now, this part of the brain is not very clever. It's there to do a job. It's just there to keep us alive, you know? And so then we start to see maybe behaviours like anger or anxiety or extreme worry or withdrawal. Children who can't explain and verbalise how they feel, what happens is often it shows in their body language.
Sharon, are there ways that parents shouldn't deal with their child's stress or shock that maybe was quite harmful?
What's really interesting is that a lot of adults find it very difficult to deal with stress. And that's generally because they haven't been taught good ways to manage stress as children. As I said before, we need help as young people to be able to manage that really big feeling of shock or feeling of overwhelming stress. So that's when we often see that adults have an inability to be able to cope. So everything that we do as parents, every time we respond in a particular way, particularly if it's an unhelpful way, maybe dismissing a child's feelings or telling them, you know, that they've got nothing to worry about, or maybe even modelling unhealthy and unhelpful ways ourselves, we'll be laying down synapses in the brain that actually don't allow them to be able to deal with those feelings helpfully. So I think the ways not to deal with it is by dismissing it, showing unhelpful ways, not allowing them to talk about their feelings. They would be really unhelpful ways to develop those healthy synapses in the brain.
And what about tips then? What should parents do?
Well, that brings me on to another little friend of mine.
I like the little friends you bring on the show.
So this is our owl. Now the owl, the wise owl, represents our neocortex, so our thinking brain, our learning brain. And that's where all our strategies are kept, all of our problem solving and planning and language skills and all of that type of thing. Now, if we have been modelled as children really good ways to be able to deal with stress and shock, then we can access those neuropathways in the brain to be able to calm down and keep calm and in control our little reptile brain. So there are lots of different ways that we can do that. So everything that we do, because the brain in the early years is really highly sensitive to stress, and the delicate architecture of the brain can be damaged if we don't support children during stress and shock. So everything that we do, the way that we respond, the way that we listen, the way that we play, the way that we cuddle, the way that we respond to challenging behaviour, the way that we support them with big feelings will help to develop a nice healthy owl brain, so that we can develop that. So some different strategies that we can use. The first one I would say is just teaching good breathing techniques. So I thought perhaps we might have a little go. Is that okay? Yeah. So I've brought along what I'll call a visual breathing buddy. And things, there's lots of different ones that you can use, but this one's lovely. It's lovely and colourful. And all we do is we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouths in time to the expansion and the sort of, yeah. So we breathe in and then we breathe out. And then breathe in and out. And once more, in and then out. And it gives children sort of a visual distraction as well, which is really nice.
I love that.
Nice sort of breathing visual as well. The other one is a sort of like a figure of 8 breathing, and it includes that sort of gentle, nurturing touch, which releases oxytocin, which is a killer of cortisol, which is obviously part of that stress response that's fired. So we can just, let me do it on you. Is that okay?
Yep.
So if I'm your mum or your caring adult, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a figure of 8 really gently on your forearm. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in through one part of the figure of 8 and out through the other part, and just follow the rhythm that I'm going to be using. You ready? Okay, so let's breathe in and out and in and out and in and out. So all lovely and gentle and tickly.
It is,
and of course that gentle nurturing touch does release all of those lovely feel-good hormones and helps to bring down the blood pressure and the heart rate and everything else.
Now, would you do those things like when there's a situation and when the child is feeling stressed, or is it stuff that you can do like on a regular basis?
I think it's good to be practicing the stuff when we don't need them, because then our brain remembers. Because when we're in fight, flight or freeze, our reptile brain takes over and we don't always think about doing that stuff. But to do it in the moment is great too.
Well, so thanks very much, Sharon, for talking to us about shock and stress and how to deal with it in children.
Very welcome.
See you again very soon.
Look forward to it, Chris.
Thank you. Well, everyone, now to